The glass doors of Halcyon Tech sighed open like they always did. Morning light poured across the lobby. It made a clean rectangle on the marble floor. People moved through that rectangle like a slow river. Suits. Heads down. Phones pressed to ears. The city hummed beyond the lobby, but inside it was a clockwork of calm. Sophia Mercer walked in. She moved with purpose. Her heels clicked on marble. The sound bounced in the high ceiling and disappeared. She was the CEO. Her suit was tailored. Her schedule was full. Her name was on the door. She knew how to turn numbers into plans, and plans into profits. She liked order. She liked control. Across the lobby, a man knelt on his knees and wiped. His rags smelled faintly of lemon and bleach. The man's name was John Reyes. He was a janitor. He had a threadbare jacket and hands that told stories, small scars, a permanent light callus on his thumb. He moved patiently. He did not rush. He had a son to get to school. He had bills to pay. He had a promise he kept every week. "Morning, John," said Emma, the receptionist, smiling. Emma knew everybody's coffee order by heart. She poured the mail into neat stacks. She was good at remembering birthdays. John tipped his cap. He smiled. It was a small smile. It seemed to come from a place that never ran dry. Sophia watched, only for a second. She had appointments, memos, investors waiting. But there was something about the way John cleaned the lobby. He didn't hurry. He smoothed each streak carefully, as if the marble deserved respect. The mop moved with rhythm. A small bird outside chirped. The lobby smelled like warm paper from the mailroom and coffee from the cafe on the corner. Later that day, Sophia's assistant, Evelyn, slid a file across the glass desk. "Board wants that Q3 forecast by noon," Evelyn said. Her tone held the usual mix of urgency and calm. Sophia nodded. She inhaled. She tackled the numbers. She exhaled. She turned a messy spreadsheet into a story that made sense. But between the lines of profit projections, a tiny, soft curiosity nudged her. She thought of the man with the rag. She didn't know why. Maybe it was his slow hands. Maybe it was the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Maybe CEOs are human too. For a moment, she wished she could trade places, to know the small, quiet things that keep a person going. At 5:30 p.m., the building dimmed the lights automatically. Most people had left. The lobby's rectangle of light shrank. John was still there. He hummed as he folded his mop. He spoke into the empty air, as if reminding himself of a list. "Pick up Miguel, buy milk, call the landlord." The hum was soft. The sound of distant traffic came in through the glass. Sophia lingered near the elevators. She pretended to check a message. She watched John now from across the marble. He carried his mop bag like a worn backpack. He wore a hoodie under his jacket. There was tenderness in his tired shoulders. She felt a small tug in her chest, a question that didn't belong in a calendar item. She told herself to forget it. She told herself leadership was about focus. She stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught sight of a sticky note on a janitor's cart, half covered in dust. The note read, "For the kids. J." Her hand tightened around the elevator rail. What did he mean, for the kids? Who were those kids? And why did the note make her throat go dry? She would find out. But not today. Tonight, a single discovery changed the outline of everything Sophia thought she knew about charity, poverty, and who carries the weight of generosity. The next morning, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about the sticky note. Her day was a silo of meetings, but the note kept floating back like a small bird that would not be shooed away. At lunch she walked to the staff cafe and overheard a whisper. "John's been late twice this week," someone said. "Kids got school parent meetings, I think." Another voice added, "He always brings his son to the bus. He looks exhausted." Small talk slid into concern. People happen to notice what they want to notice. Sophia found John at his usual station, kneeling by the fountain, rubbing a stubborn stain. She paused. She stepped closer. "John," she said, sudden and direct. Her voice surprised her. Not many people could call him by name and not expect a transaction in return. He looked up. There was a blink of curiosity in his dark eyes. "Yes, ma'am," he said. His voice was warm and careful. "You left a note on the cart yesterday." She pointed. "For the kids." John's hands stalled. For the first time she saw him fully. There was a slow exhale. He folded his rag and sat on the low wall beside the fountain. He looked at his shoes. In that pause, the lobby seemed very large and very small at the same time. "My boy's name is Miguel," he said. He touched the rag like it was something sacred. "He's 7. He likes drawing trucks and eating oranges." He looked up. His eyes were bright. "But the kids I mean the ones at St. Mary's shelter." The words were simple. They landed heavy. St. Mary's was a block over, a battered building with barred windows and a painted sign. Sophia had driven past it a dozen times. She had seen the rusted gate. She had never stopped. John's voice trembled a little. "I give half my paycheck there," he said. "Every month. Half." The lobby grew quiet. Someone walked by and pretended not to hear. A plant in the corner chewed on air. Evelyn, passing by with a stack of files, stopped. Emma hovered with a cup of coffee, her eyes wide. Sophia felt the blood leave her face and then come back warmer. Numbers slid through her mind. What did half mean? Not abstract figures. Real dollars. Groceries. Rent. Miguel's shoes. Yet here he was, steady as a lighthouse in a storm. "Why?" she asked. That was a practical question, and also a fragile one. John rubbed his face and smelled faintly of soap and something like old coins. He told his story slowly, like someone adjusting to telling something impossible. "My wife, she left 2 years ago," he said. "Left without a note. Left the boy and the bed and the half of bills she paid." He laughed softly, then stopped. "I started giving to St. Mary's because there was a little girl there who used to sing. She sang like a radio, Sophia. She'd hum while the volunteers passed out sandwiches." He smiled at the ceiling. "The first time I gave, I felt like I'd set something right." Sophia listened. She thought of boardrooms and projections and stakeholders. She thought of a ledger that never accounted for the small, private economies of the heart. She felt something shift. Her throat tightened. She looked at John's hands. They were calloused, true. They were the hands of someone who repaired things, a pipe, a chair, a small boy's scraped knee. "That's noble," she said, weakly, and then hated the word for being too grand and for feeling like an external applause where none was needed. John shrugged as if to say he did what he could, and that was that. "Do you ever struggle?" Sophia asked. The question was obvious and terrible. "Every month," John said. "But Miguel likes cereal. He likes soccer. And those kids at St. Mary's, when the lights go out in the TV room and they still clap for a cartoon. I can't not help." He tapped his chest lightly. "It's where I put my compass. It keeps me honest." Outside, rain started in a slow hush. It made soft music on the glass. The lobby smelled like wet pavement. Sophia sat down on the low wall. She felt oddly small and curiously awake. "What if someone finds out?" she blurted, thinking of the world that weighs charity against status. John half smiled. "Some folks know. Most don't. I like it that way." A silence grew between them. It was not empty. It was full of something like possibility. Evelyn shifted her papers. Emma refilled a plant's water and pretended not to listen. The rain tapped a pattern against the windows. Sophia left the lobby that day with John's words stitched into her sleeve. She couldn't place why they felt important. She only knew the feeling, like a chapter had opened and she was standing at the first sentence. That evening, Sophia received an anonymous envelope on her desk. Inside, a crumpled receipt from St. Mary's and a note that read simply, "Look closer. Who sent it? And why was the receipt addressed to John Reyes?" The envelope sat on Sophia's desk like a small accusation. It was anonymous. No return. No flourish. Just a crumpled receipt from St. Mary's and the words, "Look closer." Her hand trembled slightly as she smoothed the paper. Curiosity is a dangerous thing in the life of a CEO. It carves time out of calendars. It creates exceptions. But curiosity can also lead to truth. Sophia called Evelyn. She asked for the shelter's contact. Evelyn hesitated, then offered a name, Maria Alvarez, volunteer coordinator. "She runs on coffee and stubbornness," Evelyn said. Sophia smiled. The world felt like it had a seam she could unpick. She drove. The city blurred and then became very small blocks and then the gate of St. Mary's. The paint was peeling. The bell above the door jangled low and honest. A stray dog slept near the steps. Children's laughter collided with a radio playing low in the background. Maria met her in the foyer. She wore a sweater with elbow patches and a resolve that looked like work. "We don't usually take CEOs, Maria said, squinting at Sophia's suit. "We take people who knuckle down." Sophia laughed and told her she was not there for a speech. She wanted to understand. The shelter smelled like warm soup and detergent. It smelled like peeled apples and crayons. A line of kids waited for bread. One little girl with a gap-toothed grin held a toy truck and hummed. Sophia felt the air inside the shelter press gently against her chest. The room was small and crowded with hope. She watched as volunteers moved like beacons, quiet, systematic, vigilant. "John comes here," Maria said. "He covers a lot of our food drives. He doesn't make himself known. He gives through our donation box. He signs as Jr." Maria's eyes softened. "He's been doing it for almost a year." Sophia watched a photograph pinned on a board, a group of kids with painted faces, 3 volunteers, and a small, blurred figure of a man in the background. Was that John? She felt the familiar line of discomfort when systems don't account for human generosity. Her company wrote big checks. It posted press releases. But here, at St. Mary's, help arrived in small, regular notes. A volunteer named Robert showed her the ledger. It was handwritten. Names were neat and chipped away like old paint. "He gives enough for groceries," Robert said. "Sometimes for shoes. He never asks for recognition." He tapped the page. "And when he gives, he writes, 'For the kids.' J." Sophia learned more. Donations were timed to the rent period. John's money always arrived 3 days before the shelter paid its butcher. It was precise. It was modest. It was life-changing. As the afternoon dissolved, Sophia found herself in the children's room, sitting on a small plastic chair that swallowed her in its earnestness. Miguel, John's son, was there for the afternoon. He ran to her, arms open, and hugged her waist. His hair smelled like shampoo and sun. He told her, without prompting, about the girl who could sing. His small world felt whole in the way children's worlds often do, absolute and immediate. When Sophia left, she felt unraveled and stitched back in a new pattern. She thought of the invisible economies that run beneath polished facades. She thought of the ledger in her own office that never had a line for ragged joy. That night, she could not sleep. She opened the company's charitable giving reports. There were numbers, charts, PR-friendly photos. There was a program called Halcyon Gives. It had budgets and annual goals. It had committees and a press kit. It was efficient. It was clean. She compared the company checks to John's precise, anonymous gifts. The math was brutal. Halcyon could underwrite an after-school program without blinking. Yet half the time their money went to grand gestures, not steady lifelines. Sophia felt a growing discomfort. She had built systems that listened to numbers and not to names. She had been good at scaling things. But what could scale compassion without losing its heartbeat? A late-night message popped up on her phone. It was from an unknown number. Meet me in the lobby at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Bring nothing but shoes that can run. J. Sophia stared at the message. Who was J? John. A prank. An invitation? She thought of Miguel's grin. She thought of the little girl who sang. She thought of a company that made headlines but sometimes missed the quiet places where people learned to keep their lights on. At 7 a.m., the lobby would be empty save for one figure. Sophia would arrive and find John waiting, with something she never expected, a petition. It asked for more than charity. It demanded a change. Would she sign it? Sophia arrived at 7 a.m. The lobby was pale and sleeping. The automatic lights hummed. The city outside was only beginning to wake. John stood near the fountain, bundled, eyes steady. In his hands he held a clipboard. On the clipboard was a petition. Sophia approached slowly. The petition read in crisp, simple letters, Halcyon employees, donate 1 paid hour a month to volunteer at St. Mary's. Match employee gifts up to X dollars. Make giving regular, not ceremonial. It was a modest ask. It was also bold. It required time. Time is a rare currency in that tower of glass. Why make it a company policy? She asked. Her voice sounded formal in the empty lobby. John shifted. Because every month is when they struggle, he said. Because we have people here who could teach a class, fix a broken pipe, read a story. Because gifts with logos fade. People don't. He looked at her, steady. I don't want pity. I want partnership. Sophia felt the question like a stone in her shoe. She had carefully cultivated a brand that made headlines. Philanthropy at her company came with photo ops and guest lists. John wanted something quieter. He wanted consistency. He wanted coworkers to bring their real hands. You think they'll do it? She asked, thinking of executives, of analysts, of people who measured minutes. He shrugged. Some will. Some won't. But the ones who do will change more than the kids. He tapped the clipboard. They'll change themselves. That line landed with an odd softness. Sophia pictured her boardroom, the faces, the lamps, the polite applause after a quarterly win. She pictured those same people kneeling to fix a leaking sink or listening to a child who had never been read to. She felt both alarm and possibility. Evelyn, passing by with fresh mail, paused. She read the petition and exhaled. We can set up a registry, she suggested. Her mind already sketched logistics. Emma, who'd been quietly watching from the reception desk, wiped her hands and nodded. There was a ripple, action forming inside the building. It had the slow inevitability of weather. Sophia took the clipboard. She scanned the names of potential signatories. The handwriting was messy, genuine. There were scribbles. I'll help with tutoring. I can fix shelves. I'll bring board games. She read one line and felt a prick in her eyes. Miguel. The petition already had a few signatures. Not many. But enough. A thought rose like a tide. What if Halcyon made a choice to be inconveniently kind? What if it redirected a fraction of its attention toward regular, small help? She imagined press releases that didn't shout but whispered, "We will stay." She called a brief, impromptu meeting in the afternoon. She invited John, Maria from St. Mary's, and 2 board members. The room smelled faintly of coffee and new possibility. The board members were cautious at first. They spoke about brand alignment, tax deductions, logistics. They asked about cost-benefit ratios. They asked about measurement. John spoke last. He didn't use PowerPoint. He spoke like a man who had given half his paycheck and thus knew what sacrifice felt like. You can measure everything, he said. But some things you must choose to do because they are right. If this company can give time, it can give dignity. The board listened. Some faces softened. Others remained unreadable. The CFO asked about payroll and how to account for volunteer hours. Numbers were smoothed and sorted. The legal counsel asked about liability and waivers. The CEO, Sophia, thought of the crumpled receipt in the anonymous envelope and the sticky note on the janitor's cart. She thought of Miguel's laugh and the little girl who sang. She signed the petition that day. Her signature was small and careful. She did not make a show of it. She just signed. It felt like falling into a river. She felt the current and let it carry her. Back in the lobby, after the meeting, John turned to her and said, quietly, "Thank you." For a moment they stood with the city sliding by like a film behind them. But not everyone was grateful. That evening, a terse email landed in Sophia's inbox. It was from a board member worried about shareholder optics. "We need strategy," the message read. "This will require vetting." Another email suggested PR framing. A third warned of volunteer fatigue. Sophia felt the familiar gears of corporate life grinding. They would chew away at simplicity if she let them. She had a choice: let the petition become another box to tick, or let it breathe. The next morning, a small headline ran in the local paper about Halcyon's new initiative. It framed the petition as a PR stunt. The shelter received backlash. John received a letter. Someone from Halcyon's senior team wanted to manage the story. Sophia had to decide: control the narrative or protect the people behind it. The headline hit like cold rain. Halcyon launches volunteer program. Is it PR or progress? It led with a photo of Sophia smiling, clipboard in hand. The article quoted an anonymous board member and suggested the petition was a calculated move for brand lift. Comments flooded. Some praised. Some mocked. Some questioned motives. Sophia read the article in the quiet of her kitchen that evening. The city was a scatter of lights beyond her window. She felt something like grief for nuance. The paper had the facts wrong. Or half right. It framed a human act as strategy. It flattened John's ragged generosity into a thumbnail. She could have called a press conference. She could have given a polished interview. She could have designed an elegant narrative and fed it to every outlet. She could have smoothed the edges until the world liked the shape of the story. She had the power to do that. She also had the choice not to. Instead, Sophia drove to St. Mary's at dusk. The shelter's lights glowed like a small ship in fog. Children were coloring. Volunteers were serving dinner. John stood by a soup pot, ladling bowls with hands that knew exactly the right rhythm. Miguel hovered nearby, proud and shy. Sophia didn't make a speech. She sat on a plastic chair and started wiping tables with a damp cloth. It felt ordinary and enormous. She listened to small stories: a woman telling how she'd found work after 3 months here, a girl who wanted to learn to weld, a teen who hums when he sleeps. She met a volunteer named Michael who taught carpentry in the evenings and had a laugh like an old radio. People asked why Halcyon was involved now. Sophia told them the truth. "Because a man named John reminded me we could do better," she said. The room stayed quiet for a beat. Someone laughed. Someone sniffed back a tear. Miguel climbed into her lap and showed her a drawing of a building with many windows. "That's the office," he said. "That's where Daddy works." Sophia's chest tightened. Back at Halcyon, the PR team drafted releases that would polish the story into a marketing gem. They wanted photos of executives smiling while serving soup. They wanted metrics and hashtags. Sophia read the drafts and felt a small, cold stone in her throat. She told them no. "Do not use the kids' faces," she insisted. "No staged shots. No lines that turn sacrifice into spectacle." The team argued. They worried about optics. They worried about missed opportunities. But she held firm. The story would be told differently, not as a brand campaign, but as an invitation. A real invitation requires risk. Halcyon rolled out a modest program. Employees could sign up for one paid hour a month. The company matched small donations. They sent a bus once a quarter to bring volunteers. They earmarked a portion of funds for structural repairs at St. Mary's. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't loud. It was steady. Months passed. People who had signed up continued to show up. Analysts at the company noticed a subtle change in culture. Meetings that had been all numbers now had space for stories. A new intern formed a weekend robotics club at the shelter. A facilities manager taught basic plumbing. Miguel learned to garden. The singing girl, who had once hummed in the shadow of a radiator, now led a small choir on Saturday mornings. Not everything was tidy. Some employees grumbled about time. Some donors demanded recognition. A few headlines returned, skeptical and gleeful. But the kids at St. Mary's grew thicker with laughter. Their lunches were fuller. Their coats were warmer. One evening, Sophia stood in the lobby and watched John mop the floor. He hummed the same tune he had hummed months earlier. He paused, looked up, and the two of them shared a quiet nod. No words. That nod was enough. On social media, someone posted Miguel's drawing of the building with many windows. The caption read, "My dad cleans the building. He gives kids to other kids and makes the world softer." It went viral in that tender way that has no press release. People wrote comments. "I cried. My community does this too. How do I help?" Months later, at the company's annual meeting, Sophia told the story not as a PR anecdote but as a question. She spoke about receipts, sticky notes, and a crumpled petition. She said Halcyon could measure KPIs and kindness. She urged the company not to choose the easier story. She ended her speech with a question, the same question she now asked you, the viewer, sitting with a cup of something warm or cold, deciding whether to click, to comment, to share. Final thought-provoking question, leave in comments. If you learned someone in your community was giving half their paycheck to help others, would you call them a hero, or would you ask why their generosity had to be a private sacrifice? Which would you choose? Louder charity that gets headlines, or quieter, steadier giving that changes lives without applause, and why?